You are listening to the Edgar Ortega radio show. This episode, titled Aikido and the Sword, is my interview with Jim Alvarez, Chief Instructor at Aikido of Livermore in Livermore, California. At his dojo, you can practice Aikido, as well as the art of Shinkendo, where they will occasionally incorporate live blade in practicing technique to make proper cuts, and he'll tell us how he uses the sword study to enhance his students' Aikido practice. We also discuss a number of other things. This is yet another installment in my Exploring Aikido series. You can find this and other interviews with people in the Aikido world in my playlist. You can find that at my YouTube channel. Simply follow this video to my channel and subscribe so you can catch each of my interviews and other videos. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button and tell me what you think about this show afterward. If you're a returning listener, thank you again as always for listening. Please also like and follow the Edgar Ortega radio show page on Facebook, and please follow on Instagram as well. My name is Edgar Ortega. Let's go now to my talk with Jim Alvarez. Jim Alvarez, 6th Dan, is founder and chief instructor at Aikido of Livermore in Livermore, California. He began his martial arts training in 1973 in Chinese Kung Fu, and in 1978 began his study of Aikido. He studied under numerous Aikido sensei until he met Hiroshi Ikeda sensei and Mitsugi Satomi Shihan. He trained exclusively with both Shihan since 1990, and he is one of Satomi Shihan's senior instructors in the Aikido schools of Ushiba organization. In 1992, he began his study of Shinkendo, a traditional Japanese sword art, under the founder Toshishiro Obata, and he is Obata Sensei's most senior student in Northern California. Jim Alvarez Sensei, thanks for taking time to talk with me today.
Well, thank you for asking me, Edgar. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, like I said before, I'm out here in Stockton, so I'm not too far from you, and I've always lurked around your webpage and intended to go out there and see what your dojo's all about. Haven't been able to do so, but it's cool that I get to talk to you now. Is it
well,
hot?
Great. You're always welcome.
Yeah, is it as hot out there as it is out here in Stockton? It's kind of warm today.
Well, having lived out in Manteca for several years, I always know it's a bit hotter out there in the valley than it is here in the Livermore Valley. So it's warm today, but probably not as warm as where you are.
Oh yeah, so you don't live in Manteca anymore?
Not anymore. That was quite a few years ago, and that's where I discovered Aikido in that area, and where I did the bulk of my initial training was in the Stockton, Sacramento area. Yeah,
the most part, my adventures in Livermore include in the Altamont Hills. They're hunting for snakes or something, but tonight might be a good night looking for snakes to come out on the roads. Anyway, you're the Dojo Choa at Aikido of Livermore. Talk to me about Aikido of Livermore. Give us a little history on your dojo.
Well, in 1989, I had moved back to Livermore, like I said, from where I was living in Manteca, and wanted to start a small group of people practicing Aikido. There was Aikido in San Jose, and there was Aikido in Castro Valley, but there was no Aikido in Livermore, Dublin, Pleasanton area. So I found a jiu-jitsu dojo that was willing to let me share some time on their mat. So we started a couple days a week at that dojo. And after a couple of years, the group that had formed to train Aikido there, we all decided that it would be a good time to go on and get our own place. So about 1991-ish or so, we moved to our own permanent location, and we did another move about 10 years ago to our current location, much bigger mat, a little bit nicer space, and that's sort of the history of Aikido in the Livermore area. There wasn't any Aikido here for many, many years. I was the only Aikido instructor in this area. There are a couple of other ones now. There's one in Dublin, there's one in Pleasanton, but we're the longest running Aikido school in this area.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, in your introduction, we talked a little bit about your transition from Kung Fu to Aikido. How did that happen? Give us your extended story on your beginnings with Aikido, but I want to hear about some Kung Fu right now.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting story, actually. I had returned from Hawaii. My dad was in the service. His last tour of duty was in Hawaii. Graduated high school in Hawaii. Anyway, eventually landed back in Livermore around late 1973-ish or so. It was the height of the Kung Fu series on television with Kwai Chang Caine, David Carradine playing Kwai Chang Caine. Anyway, so I'm working at a Western Electric plant. A friend of mine comes in and he says, I found Kung Fu school in Livermore. And I said, no way. He says, yeah. He goes, I went there last night. I'm going back there tonight.
Did you have long hair?
Oh, I had really long hair.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I went with him that night to Far East Kung Fu Academy. It was right in Livermore, next to the high school, Livermore High School. And it was Sifu Bill Steele. He studied with Y.C. Wong, pretty legendary Tiger Crane Kung Fu teacher in San Francisco. Anyway, I went and I was immediately hooked. It was like, boy, this is what I've been looking for like my whole life. Right. Something like it just clicked.
That was your first experience with martial arts?
That was my first experience with, well, I had seen Kung Fu movies in Hawaii, the Kung Fu series. So, but this was my first experience actually walking into a school where they're actually practicing martial arts. So I immediately joined. My friend who brought me there that night never showed up again. So he was like my spiritual guide for just that moment and said, look here. Another funny thing is that all my brothers are consummate musicians. They all have different skills. One brother's a drummer, another brother's a bass player, another younger brother is a symphony orchestra kind of trained musician. I can't play anything. I can play a good CD, but that's about it. And so finding the martial arts was sort of like, it gave me my thing. So anyway, I was down there 5 nights a week, just training crazy. I was just under 20 and was training there. So anyway, then I moved from Livermore into the Central Valley, and it became sort of difficult to continue to train in Livermore now that I was commuting. And so I heard about Aikido, and it just so happened that Delta College there in Stockton offered an Aikido class. They started to offer it in one semester when I was looking through their magazine.
Who was teaching it?
The man that was teaching it was a man named Hirsch Roby.
Oh, okay.
Hirsch Roby was a senior student of Deng Thong Tri Sensei, who would eventually become my main teacher. So I stopped doing the Kung Fu. I had done it for about 5 years or so, and I really loved it. But I found the Aikido at Delta College, and I continued to practice my Kung Fu forms actually for quite a few years after I started Aikido, and it helped me put together some interesting correlations to the Kung Fu forms I was doing, and I was able to see applications in the Kung Fu forms that corresponded more to Aikido moves, whereas I hadn't seen those before. So it was a nice transition, and so I appreciate deeply Sifu Bill Steele's foundation, the foundation he gave me in the martial arts and it gave me a really good place to build upon, where I've gone since that time.
Oh, cool. No, that is really cool. And eventually you found other instructors. Tell me about what it's like, or how you found Aikida and Satomi Shihan, and what it's like working with them. Those are impressive instructors.
They are. Well, I moved back to Livermore, like I said, in 1989, started the dojo, and had sort of this feeling that the reason I started the dojo, I was a little tired of driving. As I said, I lived in Manteca, and when I started training with Tree Sensei, that was Sacramento. So that was an hour drive. Yeah. And so I was driving an hour to Sacramento a few times a week. And when I moved back to Livermore, I says, I'm tired of driving. I'm going to start a dojo, have some people to train with. And but I needed a place to train myself still. So I had met Koichi Barish Sensei prior to my moving to Livermore. So he was a big influence on me. I traveled with him to Russia a couple of times, and but he was a major influence on me in the mid to late 60s. And again, I started this dojo. I decided that I would go and do my own training in San Jose with Jack Wada Sensei. So I went out to train with Jack Wada Sensei. Jack was also a good friend of Barish Sensei, so there was an interaction there. Again, still with Barish Sensei. Was able to train with Steven Seagal Sensei when he visited the San Jose dojo in the early 90s. As well as other teachers in the Bay Area that were a big influence on me. Yeah. And I also started just searching around, trying to train with anybody that was either coming to the Bay Area. Yamada Sensei would be one, going into Berkeley and training with Shibata Sensei. I was also traveling a lot for work, so I would bring my gi with me any place any city I was going to, and pop into a dojo there and train. So I felt that was an important aspect of my overall understanding, is to have been able to train with all these different teachers and get different input and start to, feel out what Aikido was going to become for myself. That's when I met Ikeda Sensei. When I first saw Ikeda Sensei, his Aikido and his understanding of some of the principles that I had never been exposed to just totally blew me out of the water. I basically said to myself, well, I thought I knew some stuff, but I think I only know this outward form of this stuff. There's something on the inside that Ikeda Sensei has that I wanted. I said, I want this. So I struggled with being part of an organization under Jack Wada Sensei and my pull to study more and more with Ikeda Sensei. So I think in about 1992-ish, 93, I left Jack Wada's organization and I joined ASU and started to exclusively train with Ikeda Sensei. I had met Saotomi Sensei long before I had actually even met Ikeda Sensei. I had seen Saotomi Sensei at the Aikido of Tamalpais in the Bay Area, and he just was totally like from another planet. I didn't understand anything that he did physically, but I relished when he would talk. So we'd sit in Seiza a lot, and he still does this. Sensei's now 80. His message, what he says, is as important, if sometimes not, is more important than um, watching him do his physical Aikido. They're both great. So anyway, I was training with Ikeda Sensei for a long, long time. And I credit my growth in understanding that either shined a light on me that Satomi Sensei began to notice who I was. When I was going to summer camps, I was going to camps with Satomi Sensei. I would always be there in the front row, wishing and hoping that he would call me for to take ukemi.
Yeah.
I was ready. I was just itching, and it just wasn't happening. So I was getting lots of ukemi from Ikeda Sensei, and so Satomi Sensei came to the Bay Area one time, and I was training exclusively that seminar with the guy that was taking ukemi for Satomi Sensei.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what prompted me to do this, but he finished throwing this guy, and I looked at Satomi Sensei. He gave me this look like, yeah, come on. So I don't know whether it was a grab or a strike or whatever. So I attacked him. And he threw me 4 times, and then just, said, okay, go train. And I went, okay, that's a start. So the next time he finished demonstrating, he says, okay, go ahead, practice. I looked at him again, and he did it again. He gave me this kind of look, and I attacked him. So I did that the rest of the afternoon. So I was able to take ukemi right after he finished demonstrating with this guy, because everybody was then choosing partners, and he was just throwing me 4 times. So soon after that, he noticed me more and more, and I don't get as much ukemi as I used to years ago, and which I think is fair, because there's a lot of young guys that need to feel Sensei's incredible magic, his incredible touch. Yeah. But there were years where I was the only guy at a whole seminar that he threw around. And that was an incredible gift. And it was an incredible gift from Satomi Sensei. And the gift that I got from Ikeda Sensei, which is an understanding of the principles that Ikeda Sensei teaches, that gift that he gave me was the stepping stone, as I said, that allowed me to receive from Satomi Sensei this incredible gift of ukemi. And it's just been, it's been an incredible journey since making this shift.
Right. Yeah. Now you're a 6th Dan in Aikido, and even at that level, of course, we should still always consider ourselves to be students, whether you're a Q student or 6th, 7th, 8th Dan, and you still consider them. They're still your teachers.
Oh, absolutely. They it's not that I would not encourage seeing other teachers. Like there's Christian Tissier is coming here to San Francisco in a couple of weeks. Yeah. End of May. He's a great teacher. I'm going to go because it's Christian Tissier, for God's sake. So I'm not going to train exclusively under Tissier Sensei. He has just a certain way of training that for a little exposure, I'm great for just a little exposure. Yeah. Because there's probably, I know there will be, not probably, but I know there will be many aspects of his training and his way of thinking about training that will be beneficial for my total understanding. It's just not something I would want to do all the time. It's like, okay, well, I love Ethiopian food. I only get it every now and then when I go to Washington, D.C., but it's nice. I'll go do it. I like other foods much more, and I see that much more, or not see it, but eat that much more. So Satomi Sensei and Ikeda Sensei are really my guys for that I call my teachers, but everybody's my teacher as well.
Yeah, no, of course.
Satomi Sensei looks at us and he goes, you teach me. I say this stuff to my own students, because he's watching us, and he's watching what we do, and he absorbs stuff from us, how we do things, and how that understanding of 40 or 50 people on the mat doing what he just demonstrated, what can he gain from that? And I do the same thing. It's like sometimes I see somebody else do it a better way. I go, oh, that's a much better way. I like that.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Yeah, a lot of instructors tell their students that they learn from them. That's a common thing. That's really interesting as well. Now, those are your instructors. A couple of years ago, or rather after you began training with them, you began studying the sword and Shinkendo. Talk to me about how you found this Japanese sword art and relate it to how it influences your Aikido training.
Okay. I think it was around 1991-ish or so. Prior to that, I was looking for something different to do. Not that I was done with Aikido, but I just wanted something different. And so I was looking around. So I stumbled upon a guy that taught Kyudo out in the South Bay. So I visited him and watched class and tried it a little bit, and it didn't really hit me. And I thought about the Iwama weapons work, but that didn't really strike me as something that I would like. Played with it a little bit, but it didn't really hook me. So I had some friends in the Bay Area, Aikido friends, that called me up and said, we're going to have an invitation-only day-long workshop with Toshishiro Obata Sensei. He at that time, I don't believe it was called Shinkendo. I'd have to look at my certificate I got from that one-day seminar. But he says, we're inviting other instructors of different arts in the Bay Area to come to this thing. Would you like to come? I said, yeah, great. And so I went there, put on my white belt, took off my hakama, and bowed in, and was doing my best to follow the forms. It was a sword. We were working with bokan, and I had a great time. But what really hooked me was right at the end of the classes, they brought out some cutting stands, and they brought out tatami, and they brought out real swords, and they showed the relationship of what we were doing that day to cutting. He goes, this is what the sword is meant to do. That if you don't follow all of the good principles of swordsmanship, you won't be able to cut. So just swinging a stick around that looks like a sword without adhering to good sword principles doesn't allow you to do this. So anyway, I was totally hooked. That hooked me. I said, I want to study this. This is exactly what sort of I was looking for to augment my Aikido and just give me something fresh to train with.
Right, and you incorporate it into your training at your dojo, is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I teach Shinkendo as a separate class, mm-hmm. and so in about 1992 or so, I started doing private lessons with Obata Sensei's senior student in Oakland, He has since left the organization. So I studied with him for many, many years. Mike Esmael Zada Sensei. And Mike left the organization, like, I don't know, 2005 or so. Anyway, from that point on, I've remained with Obata Sensei, studying Shinkendo and watching Shinkendo grow from its infancy into what it is today. How it influences my Aikido, it's got a tremendous influence, and there's been epiphany after epiphany with sword movement and how it has slowly leached into my Aikido. It's not like I consciously did it, but it was the use of the sword and how I used my arms and how I moved and what I would think of if I got stuck in a certain place. I never liked the fact that some people get stuck and they go, okay, let's start over again. I go, no, stay here. Let me stay in this stuck position and figure out how do I get out of this. Mm-hmm. And so I usually put an imaginary sword in my hand and I go, how would I move if I had a sword? And so it's been a tremendous influence on my Aikido. It's coupled with my the gift of ukemi that Satomi Sensei gave me, and the understanding of sword, they sort of started to come, about the same time, and it's just been a tremendous asset in my understanding of movement. Obata Sensei studied under the Yoshinkan founder Gozo Shiora Sensei. So Shinkendo is heavily influenced by Aikido movement. So the footwork, it's got a lot of footwork in it. All of the footwork is very familiar to anybody that's been training Aikido for any length of time at all. So it's only enhanced my Aikido because now I have that footwork and I can move as if I have a sword or if I don't have a sword.
All right. Now, how does one begin training? I'd assume you'd start out with the bokken, like you said, and then later transition to live blade. Or how often do you do the actual cutting demos, or do you just anybody who walks in, you give them a light sword? How does that work?
Ironically, we seldom use a sword, a live blade. When we want to do some drawing practice with a blade, whether or not you're using an iaito, which is a unsharpened steel blade, or you use a live blade, that's such a low percentage of our practice. Most of the time we practice with the bokken. And we simulate as if we are drawing it from a scabbard. And we simulate as if we are returning the sword to a scabbard. And we simulate that by making our hand into that scabbard, our left hand into that scabbard, as if we were holding on to a saya or a scabbard with our left hand. So it simulates everything as if we have a scabbard. We just don't. When you look at suburi, which is just swinging the sword around, there are very few, if any, koru or old sword arts, old martial arts, that do suburi with a live blade or in the iaito. Traditionally, all the training was done with the bokken. A samurai didn't go into a dojo with his live blade and start swinging around his live blade. They went in with a bokken. That's how they trained. It was because of the injuries that were being sustained in these old dojos from bokken training, one-on-one bokken training, that the the Fukuro Shinai was developed. The Yagyu school sort of invented the Fukuro Shinai, the covered Shinai, so that people wouldn't get cracked on the head with a bokken anymore. And so that's eventually how Kendo then morphed into, the Kendo Shinai morphed into this really long, uncovered, split bamboo sword. And so traditionally, we train as if it's a traditional kind of koru. Every now and then I say, okay, today, pull out your blades. And whether they're training with a live blade or an iaito, I don't care. It's up to the student. I tell them eventually, you need to be able to do everything you're doing drawing-wise with a live blade. Yeah. What happens after about an hour of swinging a live blade? You're pretty damn tired, and most of the time, the accuracy of your edge angle and your swing angle deteriorates pretty rapidly. And so it's only good for about an hour. Swinging a bokken, you can swing a bokken around accurately and not so and not be so tired. You can swing for a couple hours.
Oh, why is that?
Easy. Balance, weight. It's not quite as heavy. I don't know.
I've seen you get pretty creative with some of the marketing you've done with that. I saw you had a lightsaber class a while back.
Yeah, we did.
That's some serious stuff.
It was a big hit with the kids. Yeah. And my senior student in Shinkendo and Aikido, Jay Hartley, he taught that class and did a really great job. And doesn't bring us 80 new students for sword, but it's certainly good marketing. Brings shines a spotlight on the dojo for that matter.
Yeah, I think they got to take their lightsabers home. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
What'd you give them?
Part of the deal. So
what'd you give them?
So they could go home and pester their brothers and sisters and their parents with their new toy.
Oh, that's a lot of fun. If anyone ever wants to try that out, they can look you up there in Livermore. Now you've taught internationally. Tell me about the places you've taught Aikido and what it's like teaching overseas there.
My first real big experience with teaching overseas was the Aikido friendship seminars in Kumamoto, Japan. I was invited by Munetsugu Sakabe Sensei. He is the local teacher in Kumamoto, along with Hiroshi Ikeda Sensei, to take part in this seminar, along with other teachers. And so it's a 3-day seminar that happens in Kumamoto every year. And there's anywhere from 5 to 7 teachers on the roster, each sharing a little bit of their Aikido. So that was my first experience, and it was quite an experience. I was able to notice that Aikido is the same no matter what country you go to. This was my first experience, and it has been my experience as I've taught in other countries as well, is that the human body is the human body. A beginner is going to move the same way in Japan that they're going to move in France. An advanced person in Japan is going to be the same as an advanced person in any other country. So people are people. I've also discovered that you don't need many words to teach Aikido in another country. Aikido it's very easy to be able to explain what you're doing, mainly in the most basic way. If I wanted to get across any particular subtle principle, I would move around the mat and work with somebody individually so that they could feel it, rather than me try to explain it in words that I don't have. So it's been a very rewarding experience. I've been back to Japan every year since 2012. Last year, unfortunately, they had to cancel the Kumamoto seminar because of the earthquake that they had earlier in the year. But they had a replacement seminar in Kyoto last year, and I was able to join with Ikeda Sensei and Kinoshita Sensei from Osaka on the teaching roster for the seminar in Kyoto. They're having now 2 seminars this year, the first weekend in Kumamoto and the second weekend in Kyoto. So I will be teaching at 2 seminars this year in Japan. I've also taught in England. I've taught in Amsterdam. I've taught in Tahiti. I've taught, where else? A little bit in France. The Tahiti story is the funniest. I went, this was quite some time ago, and I went to Tahiti, and it was before internet, and I was able to find a phone number from the Aikido Today magazine. I don't know if anybody remembers Aikido Today magazine, but it was a magazine put out quite some time ago. And it had a listing for the Polynesian Aikido Association. I called this guy, met the Aikido guy, started training with them for one night. They said, hey, we're going to have a big all-island Aikido seminar next weekend or so. Are you going to be around? I go, well, we're going to spend a couple of days over on a neighboring island. We'll come back, take the ferry back, and we'll join in on it. So I came back and joined in on the seminar, and they asked me to teach an hour of the class. And it's like, wow, that was really great. So I taught an hour of the class, and again, I was deathly afraid. I was going, no, I'm gonna run into some huge Tahitian guy that I'm just not going to be able to move at all, right? And so all of these fears come up, but it was a good growth experience. So at the end of class, the guy tells me, he goes, what are you doing? I think not the next day, but the day after. I says, I don't know, we're driving around the island. He goes, well, if you drive in this direction, by the time you get here, it's going to be close to the afternoon. This is where my dojo is. Would you come and teach a class? I said, I'd be happy to. So that's what we did. My wife and I drove around the island. We got to his dojo, 5-ish o'clock, 5:30. And so he looks at me, and in his best English, they speak French there. Right? This was not it was a French guy living in French Polynesia. He goes, we'll bow in. I warm up. You take class. I go, okay, great. So he says something in French to everybody. We bow in. Everybody stands up, and they get in a big circle around the mat. And they start shaking their hands, holding them next to their side and shaking their hands, right? Yeah. I've seen this exercise done some other Aikido dojos. So I said, okay, all right. I guess this is how they warm up, right? So I start shaking my hands. So a few minutes go by, and we're still shaking our hands. I didn't want to be the one that interrupts this thing because I'm the guest. So I'm shaking my hands like everybody else, right? 5 minutes go by, we're still shaking our hands. It's going, boy, this is an interesting practice. So let me open up to their practice and see, what can I get out of this? Oh, yeah, my shoulders are sort of tense. Maybe that's it. They do this for a while, and they just relax everything. So I'm thinking, yeah, I'll be open to what they're doing. I'm trying to relax. I'm shaking my hands. And I look over at the teacher. He looks over at me, and he just sort of smiles but doesn't say anything. I said, oh, okay, I guess he'll end it when he wants to end it. Anyway, 15 minutes go by. And finally he says, we only got 45 more minutes. And I stop immediately, and I look at him, and I go, have you been waiting on me? And he goes, yeah. I go, well, I've been waiting on you. And we both just laughed. It was the total Aiki thing, right? I'm trying to blend and trying to be a good guest and stuff. We had this great big laugh. I looked around, I go, everybody warmed up? They go, yeah. I go, boom. So we went right into class, taught a great class. they happened to have a little pub underneath the dojo there, the building. So we went down to the pub after class, had a nice beer, and laughed about it. And so it's one of my best stories about teaching internationally. It's just like,
they were waiting on you.
Everybody waiting on me. I was waiting on them, and it was just the total Aikido experience of blend. What can I learn from this? Anyway.
That was funny. Everybody else was just going along with it.
Yeah, everybody's just like waiting. And so, but teaching internationally has also brought me a slew of friends all over the world.
No, that's great. It sounds like you've had quite experiences overseas and in different countries. That's amazing, all the different places you've been to. You sent me some talking points, and one of them, interestingly enough, deals with Aikido as a martial art. It seems to be a common theme in the last few interviews, so people seem to have a great interest in the subject, and I know it'll be a topic of discussion at the upcoming Aikido at the Leading Edge Telesummit being put on by Miles Kessler Sensei later this month. So give me your views. Talk to me about Aikido is it a martial art? Talk to me about it.
Yes, it is a martial art. That's one of the important messages that comes from Satomi Sensei. Aikido is a martial art. It's not a dance. That being said, because it's a martial art, it doesn't involve fighting. So what it involves is an awareness that you pay attention to your surroundings. You pay attention to what you're doing. You don't leave yourself open. You treat it as if it's a life and death sort of experience. In the sword arts, or even in Japanese culture, if they want to say something is serious, they say it's shinken. Shinken's a live blade, a real sword. And I think it might be short for Shinken Shobu. Shinken Shobu is a duel to the death with live blades. And so Satomi Sensei views that our time on the mat, our training with our partner, is Shinken Shobu. Of course, nobody's going to die, but we need to treat it as a martial art and not just fluff movement that doesn't involve that awareness, that attention, that feeling of Shinken Shobu. But that being said, is that I also look at Aikido as this big tree. The trunk of the tree is O-sensei. He gave us this art, and the roots are deep. The roots of Aikido go to Daito-ryu, they go to sword, they go to everything that O-sensei studied. Those are his roots, and then he created Aikido. And so this tree grows, and from it there's big branches, and from those big branches there's other branches. And so people look at Aikido in many different ways, and
how would you compare it, say, to your kung fu training? As a martial art.
I think that was so early in my martial art understanding that it was truly a martial art. That school was, if I look back on it, it was primarily focused on the forms, the movement of Kung Fu. We did sparring very little. I would compare it to Shinkendo, right? We concentrate on the form and the movement and the understanding. Very few times we'll pull out the swords and we'll actually do some cutting, or we'll actually use them to do drawing practice. the same way as at Kung Fu school, we did forms. We understood the movement. And every now and then we would put on some pads and we'd do some sparring. In fact, I don't even think it was long before pads. We just did light sparring. So, I would say that an understanding of martial awareness and a feeling of confidence that your martial movement can keep you from harm. That's how I like to frame Aikido. Not that it's going to protect me in a fight. Those are words that you can say mean it's going to keep you from harm, but there's lots of Aikido movement that you can do outside of a physical altercation that will keep you from harm. So it's that awareness, that Budo awareness, that allows you to spin out of the way from some oncoming obstacle that might harm you.
Right, it kind of builds a reflex in there, doesn't it?
Right. It's your ability to relax for milliseconds, enough to determine, this has happened to me, while carrying a 6-pack of bottled beer, walking in a New York street, my toe catches a manhole cover that had sunken down into the hot street pavement, created a little crater. My toe touches this. So in less than half a second, the thought is drop the beer, make a mess, fall on the beer, make a bigger mess, or just roll.
You tucked it and rolled it?
I tucked, rolled it, came up, beer was fine, I wasn't even dirty, and I was wearing a white T-shirt.
You're safe, the beer's safe.
Everything was safe, right?
Was good.
And so it's that relaxing and being able to process some information. That's this Budo awareness. That's what I believe Satomi Sensei talks about is Aikido is a martial art. It's all of those things that bring us to a state of attention.
Right. Obviously, the topic that we can go on and on about, people seem to have a great interest in discussing it. It'd be fun to have more than one person talk about it, maybe on opposing views, but I know they're going to do that at the summit, so it should be interesting. Will you be watching the Telesummit? Have you heard about it?
I have heard about it. I have not registered. That's a lot of hours of sitting in front of a computer.
Well, they don't do it all day. They have like events throughout the day.
Yeah.
You can check out.
I have to pick and choose. I mean, I see Wendy Palmer all the time. Wendy's a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
Richard Heckler Sensei, dear friend of mine. So there are people on the panel that I have had contact with. It's an interesting subject. There's been a little bit of discussion on Facebook about the value of talking about Aikido.
Yeah.
And there's some pros and cons, and I think talking about certain aspects is valuable, but really understanding what Aikido is can only happen on the mat.
Sure.
As a martial art. If you want to take some principles off and work with them, like let's say, Wendy Palmer Sensei is, and she's doing a great job at it. But she's not teaching a martial art. She's just taking Aikido principles off the mat. I think if you're going to understand Aikido as a martial art, it can only be done on the mat. I also believe that through osmosis and through reading and through understanding what I believe these people will be talking about, helps to give each individual a sense of understanding of where they were when they started Aikido, as far as personality, thinking, those types of things that you are as a person, not a martial artist, but as a person, and where you are today. I know that I look back and I credit Aikido with transforming me into a more likable human being.
That is the end goal. John Smart talked about that in my interview with him and others. It's a common theme. Aikido at the Leading Edge, happening May 12th through 21st. Is Aikido martial art? Just one of the topics, one of many being discussed at that event. Should be lots of fun. And Sensei Jim, you can register at the link when I post this, so I'll have the link for that. You can register and watch it. Now let me throw a weird one out there for you. Have you had to deal with injuries in your Aikido career training much? I recently did something weird to my shoulder, and I'm being cautious with it. I'm not rolling. I couldn't even lift my arm the other day, but it's getting better every day. It's more annoying than anything, especially if you're a committed student not being able to train at 100%. You know, I'm just kind of not rolling and not using that side of my arm. Tell me about Aikido injuries.
Well, I can tell you that I have a brace for every joint in my body except my neck and my jaw, right? And fingers, right? So, but ankle braces, knee braces, elbow braces, wrist braces. I've iced every part of my body. I would say the worst injury I had was, and it was a recurring injury, and I'm going to knock on wood here that it, just because I'm talking about it, it doesn't flare back up again, but it's been years and years, is knee. Oh, yeah. I would have something flare up on my knee where it would slowly get worse and worse and worse, and where I couldn't even sit seiza. I could hardly bend it. Yeah. And then something would click, and it would slowly diminish and go away. So this happened a few times, and finally went and had it MRI'd and said, yeah, there's a little tear right here, when it was really bothering me. And by the time it came up to me to make an appointment to get it taken care of, it went away, and it hasn't bothered me since. But there was one thing Satomi Sensei says. He goes, you're holding a lot of tension in your knees. Start bending your knees. When I was taking Ukemi for him, and he says, start bending your knees. So it made me think about a lot of things. But I think injuries are just inherent to what we're doing. We're in a physical activity where we're moving around a mat, throwing each other around, giving our bodies to somebody to throw around. And so if you're not pushing the edge just a little bit, and I think you should always push the edge just a little bit, not so that you get hurt, but if occasionally you tweak something, well, that means you are maybe pushing the edge a little bit, and you got to be careful, but you can't be so careful that you're not gonna, push that envelope. But I also believe that, and as you just said, you got to be able to get back on the mat and then train in some fashion. Unless you can't stand up, right? If I had a cast on one hand, doesn't mean I can't train. I got two legs that work and another arm, right? If I've got a brace on some joint, well, if I'm moving and it hurts, maybe it's an indication that I can move in a different way. So, I work on that side slowly, but I always try and work with an injury. that being said, so something that might heal if I sit on the couch might heal in 2 weeks, might take 4 weeks to heal, right? But I've had 4 weeks of
but you're training
some sort of training, right? And you know, you gotta be careful. You gotta watch your own body. Right. You gotta know. But I think injuries are just a part of training. I mean, you look at gymnasts, you look at football players, you look at anybody that's involved in some kind of physical training, dancers, right? Everybody's going to tweak themselves a little bit. Yeah. It's just inherent.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, especially in martial arts. There could be a lot you could learn if you train through the, within reasonable training through the injury. Because, if for some reason, if you're doing Aikido for self-defense, for example, somebody attacks you, they don't care if you're injured, so you may be more prepared to deal with it when you're maybe holding something heavy or part of you is not able to move as you would when you're at 100%. That's interesting. All right, so you've got some events coming up. We talked about some events later this year happening at Aikido of Livermore. I know you told me about some of them, but let's promote anything you've got going on there now or later. Talk to about it.
We have our fourth San Francisco Aikido Bridge Seminar with AIKIDO Sensei, Michael Friedel Sensei from Ashland, Oregon. 7th Dan, he's part of the California Aikido Association, the organization. Myself, we also have Lisa Tomo-Leone from the Illinois area. She's the leader of the Shimboku-kai. It's the organization that AIKIDO Sensei now belongs to. And Brian Scott Sensei from Aikido of Tamalpais. The workshop is happening the first week in August, and it will be at Aikido of Tamalpais in Corte Madera. There's information on Facebook. If you look at the events, August 3rd through the 6th, it's a 4-day seminar starting on Thursday, August 3rd at 4:30, and we quit on August 6th just after 1 o'clock. So 5 great teachers. It's been remarkable for the last 4 years, so we're expecting a nice crowd and an excellent seminar. I also have AIKIDO Sensei coming back to Aikido of Livermore, my dojo.
Oh, wow.
The last weekend in October. That would be October 27th, 28th, and 29th. So information will come out on that soon. But a little bit closer to you, Edgar, not so far as Corte Madera. And then you have AIKIDO Sensei for the full weekend. Please promote those on any future shows that you have, and we invite everybody to come on out. If anyone is interested, please go to Aikido of Livermore website, aikilivermore.com, and you can get information on the San Francisco Aikido Bridge Seminar and AIKIDO Sensei Seminar in later October.
Right, good. They can find you there at the website, or if they don't remember it, they can just Google Aikido of Livermore. They'll find you there. And you guys are also on Facebook?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so they can find you on Facebook there. You can train Aikido with Sensei Jim Alvarez or some Shinkendo. Give that a try. It should be a lot of fun. We got to get you out here in Stockton. I'm going to see what I can do.
I'd love to come out.
All right, Jim Alvarez, thank you so much for taking time out to talk with me today. I enjoyed learning about Shinkendo and all that other stuff, all your story. I always enjoy hearing people's stories. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Edgar, for asking me, and best of luck with your Aikido and dojo in Stockton, and look forward to seeing you one day.
All right, hope to talk again soon. That was Jim Alvarez, 6th Dan, Chief Instructor at Aikido of Livermore in Livermore, California. I hope you enjoyed this program. If so, give this video a thumbs up, like it, leave a comment, and please share this video on your Facebook timelines and social media. I really appreciate everyone who's been sharing and watching these videos. Also, please subscribe to Edgar Ortega channel. That's Edgar Ortega, one word, on YouTube. That's where you'll find this video. Please subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, or if you're on a computer, you'll see my face pop up here in a bit. And you can click on that to subscribe. Also follow the Edgar Ortega Radio Show page on Facebook and on Instagram. I'll provide links to those in the description of this video, as well as a link to the Aikido of Livermore website, where you can contact Jim Alvarez if you need to. Thanks again for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this video in my Exploring Aikido series. My name is Edgar Ortega, and you've been listening to the Edgar Ortega Radio Show.